A lot of people ask me if I could go back in time, what would I tell a young George? I would tell him to stop worried about the outcome and everything else that you don't control. Focus on the objective and try to enjoy the process.
Yellow. Georges St-Pierre is recognized as one of the greatest fighters of all time, and still by many the greatest welterweight of all time. He is a legend, status fighter who, intriguingly enough, hated fighting.
Yeah. And I hate fighting because I know you don't. I really do. There's 2 days that I hate the most. It's the day that I'm fighting. It's freaking unbearable. The feeling of uncertainty that if you don't know if you're gonna be humiliated, you're gonna be the victor, or you're gonna be the loser. I care so much about it that is freaking unbearable. As much as I try to dismiss it, it's unbearable.
He definitely loved training, he loved learning, but for the actual fights themselves, the anxiety, his OCD, just the mental turmoil he'd endure knowing there's so much on the line, a whole world just berating and belittling him if he lost, imagining all of that. The people he would let down, the hard work he wasted, the thought in and of itself was just dreadful. And that thought motivated his conscientious pursuit towards mastery. That is what George had. What for us had an open-mindedness, a robust knowledge base and tier of understanding, definitely a further reaching combat sports intellect. Georges St-Pierre, he had an insane OCD-like work ethic, almost like a temperamental yin and yang, which now makes this interesting advice.
Stop worried about the outcome and everything else that you don't control. Focus on the objective and try to enjoy the process.
Now that Georges St-Pierre has matured, now that he's built such a strong foundation, the ability to just trust in his work, to encode his being with techniques and understandings, and to just let the game unfold as to how he diligently reinforced it. We definitely saw that in the Michael Bisping fight. Before in the past, it was all about control, to be perfect, and we felt that through Georges St-Pierre's OCD-like mentality. He was as close to perfect as the time presented. During the Michael Bisping fight, he was creating and taking advantage of traps, implementing a fluid intelligence. If Georges St-Pierre wasn't who he was, when he was, would he still have been as successful as he was? What Georges St-Pierre had was layers of knowledge and technical advantages, overwhelming his opponents' minds with infinite possibilities. GSP trained wrestling in secret and combined it with karate timing.
I spar a lot with much better decorated pure wrestler than me in MMA. I put them all down, all of them. Not because I'm a better wrestler, it's because my timing, I learned from karate how to close the gap in karate. I use the karate for the takedown. Some use karate for blitzing and like Wonder Boy.
Had an insanely well-developed jab and boxing fundamentals, all established conscientiously. Georges St-Pierre, he had great footwork and distance management. At that time, he was just a puzzle presenting infinite possibilities, overwhelming his opponents with endless questions. In that sense, what made Georges St-Pierre dangerous was his neurotic level of work ethic, which in turn established those massive knowledge advantages, established those infinite possibilities. He just drilled and drilled and drilled. He schooled a competition with knowledge advantages. He was just a better student during a time when there was so much more to learn. Knowledge is power. Hard work is the key. Would Georges St-Pierre still have that absurd work ethic if he wasn't haunted by sheer dread? Carl Jung had said something very intriguing. The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it. And that compulsive drive, which fueled him agonizingly towards the top. But now that he has the alphabet ingrained into his mind and being, now that he's learned how to write, to let go of that same ego, it granted a greater tier of articulation with those same established tools, with that same language. If this is true, it's as if one part was needed for the other part to fully manifest. But I know Georges St-Pierre also sees something, a scale where his conscientiousness, orderly nature would be accentuated by a bit more of that chaotic pull. That's typically what individuals need to take themselves to a higher level. A more chaotic individual usually needs to pull more order into their lives to fully manifest themselves. An orderly individual usually needs a bit more chaos, a bit more of that creative fire. For Georges St-Pierre, I saw the robust mind of Firas Zahabi and a team of elites compensate for that conscientious, hard work, orderly part of him. They helped pull him to the other side of the pole, I believe. But that was derived from a lifetime of experience and study. Would he have been able to climb to the top of that mountain and acknowledge the view if he hadn't been agonizingly prone to OCD? With that question in the air, perhaps it is as Carl Jung had said, to develop a healthy ego and to let it go. A mature silverback gorilla who's attained that vision due to his neurotic pursuit climbing to the top of a mountain, yin and yang. Perhaps through that one side of the coin, the yang, he was able to climb in the first place to see the yin. Nevertheless though, if Georges St-Pierre knew what he knows now, then, and he just trusted it, I don't think there would have been a person available who could have even made it look close versus Georges St-Pierre, which is perhaps why it had to happen the way it did. Where's the story without a little adversity? To bask in the Garden of Eden, there's a new level of appreciation granted when we first rise from hell. Food for thought. And until next time, peace.